What's up guys? Golden Knight here. If you've ever started drawing full of excitement and then, after a few weeks, or even months, felt that frustration of looking at the paper and thinking, I haven't improved at all. How is that possible? Don't worry. This happens to literally everyone, especially artists at the beginning of their journey. The good news is that there are a few simple principles that, when understood early, can accelerate learning in an absurd way. It's no exaggeration to say that applying these ideas can save you years of trial and error. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 essential drawing tips that every beginner should know to improve much faster. If you apply at least half of them, your perception, your confidence, and your results will change. By the way, I have to say, I've been taking the art school for digital artists by Mark Brunette, and honestly, I've never learned so much in such a short time. It's a super complete course, like a condensed art school, focused only on what really matters. Perspective, anatomy, composition, all explained really well. If you want to level up fast, this is the way. Check the first link in the description. Totally worth it. Start with simple shapes. When you draw, your brain wants quick recognition to save energy, so it recognizes symbols, not volumes. And drawing is not about reproducing symbols. It's about simulating three-dimensional forms in space. This is where most beginners get stuck without realizing it. Experienced artists see everything as basic shapes, as if they were made of Lego. When you start with simple forms, you can quickly solve three fundamental things at once. First, proportion. It's much easier to adjust the size of a sphere or a block than to try to fix a super detailed eye that ended up in the wrong place. Second, perspective. Simple shapes make it clear what's coming forward, what's going back, and how the object rotates in space. Third, volume. The drawing starts to look solid, even without shading. A powerful exercise is to force yourself to draw anything using only basic shapes. If it's a character, start with a sphere for the head, a block for the torso, cylinders for the arms and legs, and so on. No face, no clothes. Just structure. At first, this will look weird. And that's fine. This phase is not for posting, it's for training. Another important point, when you master simple shapes, drawing becomes faster. You stop hunting for lines on the paper. Instead, you quickly define the bulk of your work. So whenever your drawing looks off and you don't know why, go back to a basic question. If I erase all the details now, does this structure still work? If it doesn't, the problem isn't in the details. It's in the form. Draw big before drawing right. There's a silent trap that catches almost every beginner, thinking that drawing small is easier. It sounds logical, right? Less space, fewer things to mess up. But in practice, this slows down your progress a lot. When you draw small, you're trying to hide your own mistakes. Drawing big forces you to face the problem head-on. When the drawing takes up a good portion of the page or screen, any error in proportion, tilt, or volume becomes obvious. A crooked arm shows up immediately. A head that's too small screams at you. This can cause some initial discomfort, but that discomfort is exactly the sign that you're learning. Another crucial point is arm movement. Small drawings are usually made only with the wrist and fingers. This creates short, shaky, insecure lines. When you draw bigger, you naturally start using your forearm and even your shoulder. The result is longer, looser, more confident lines. A simple and effective exercise is this. Choose an object or reference and force yourself to draw it taking up at least 70% of the page. No fear. If you mess up big. Adjust over it. Another variation is to do quick, large, loose studies, with no commitment to finish. The goal is not to get it right, it's to train perception and gesture. In digital drawing, this applies too. Zoom out, use brushes bigger than what feels comfortable, and avoid extreme zooming to fix details too early. Train line, not just image. When someone looks at a drawing and says, "This looks professional," they often can't explain why. But in most cases, what's behind that feeling is line quality. Even before understanding anatomy, light, or perspective, the brain perceives whether a line is confident or insecure. A good line conveys decision. A bad line conveys doubt and insecurity. Shaky lines usually come from too much fear. Fear of making mistakes, of going too far, of committing to the drawing. The hand freezes because the brain is asking for permission all the time. Training line is training confidence. There's also a common mistake, trying to draw nicely while doing exercises. Line exercises are not meant to look pretty, they're meant to make you better. Long lines made in a single motion, even if they overshoot a bit. Circles that start crooked and improve with repetition. This builds muscle memory. Another important point is understanding that line is not just contour. Line describes form, direction, and energy. A thicker line can indicate weight or proximity. A lighter line can indicate distance or softness. When you start varying pressure and rhythm, even a simple drawing comes to life. It's also worth looking at your own old drawings. Compare the lines. Are they firmer? More economical? Do you need fewer, hairy strokes to get where you want? That's real progress, even if you're not drawing complex things yet. When you improve your line, everything else improves along with it. Anatomy becomes clearer, perspective becomes more readable, and even mistakes look better. Stop erasing so much. Erasing gives a false sense of control. It feels like you're fixing the drawing, but often you're just hiding the process. For someone who's learning, this is a huge problem. Learning happens when you see the mistake, understand the mistake, and consciously correct the mistake. If you erase impulsively, you cut this cycle in half. When you leave wrong lines visible, something important happens. Your brain starts to compare. It sees the old line and the new one at the same time. That comparison is gold. That's how the eye learns to better judge angles, proportions, and directions. By erasing everything, you lose that reference and end up making the same mistake again, just somewhere else. There's also the emotional factor. Erasing too much usually comes from fear of making mistakes. But drawing is literally a sequence of increasingly smaller mistakes. No artist gets it right on the first try. The good ones just make mistakes quickly and correct them better. When you accept that, the process becomes lighter and less exhausting. You stop fighting the paper. A practice widely used by experienced artists is to draw with light lines at first and reinforce them as decisions are made. That way, you don't need to erase, you just choose which lines survive. Another approach is using a light color for construction and a darker one on top, especially in digital. The mistake stays there, visible, but it doesn't get in the way. Try doing entire studies without an eraser, or even using a pen. At first it's terrifying, everything will go wrong. But after a while, you'll notice that you start thinking more before making a stroke and begin making more assertive decisions. Learn proportion before style. Wanting to have your own style is natural. Everyone wants their drawing to be recognizable, different, full of personality. The problem is when style becomes a shortcut to avoid the basics. This happens a lot without people realizing it. They start repeating the same mistakes, call it style, and get stuck there for years. Coherent proportion is what makes a drawing look right, even when it's highly stylized. When proportion works, the brain accepts the drawing. When it doesn't, something feels off, even if no one can explain exactly why. And this applies to everything: human bodies, faces, objects, animals, environments. Style comes later, when you know exactly what you're breaking and why. That's when exaggeration becomes a choice, not an accident. A practical way to train proportion is to draw using relative measurements. Instead of thinking in centimeters, think in how many times this fits into that. How many heads make up the body? How does the forearm compare to the upper arm? How does the foot compare to the head? This kind of thinking sharpens your eye a lot. It also helps greatly to draw from observation, using references, not from memory. When you draw only from your head, the brain tries as much as possible to pull symbols, as I mentioned. When you draw while looking, it's forced to measure and compare. When proportion improves, the entire drawing levels up. Even without shading, even without detail, even with simple line. And then, naturally, your style starts to appear, because you begin making conscious choices about what to exaggerate, simplify, or omit. Use reference without guilt. There's a romanticized idea that the true artist creates everything from their head. This is one of the biggest myths in drawing. Creating from your head doesn't mean creating from nothing. It means recombining things you've already seen. And without reference, what you see ends up being limited, repetitive, and distorted. When you avoid references, you're not being more creative. You're just reinforcing your own mistakes. The brain fills gaps with simplified symbols. That's why so many people always draw the same type of nose, the same hand, the same pose. It's not style, it's lack of visual information. The powerful strategy is to use reference and then draw from memory right after. First, observe and draw while looking. Then close the reference and try to repeat it. This forces the brain to turn observation into knowledge. Over time, you become more efficient at retaining the information you're observing. Another important point is variety. Always using the same reference is limiting. If you want to learn the human body, use different people, different bodies, different angles. This prevents you from learning a single model and helps you understand the logic behind the form. Professional artists use reference all the time, including the ones you admire. The difference is that they usually don't talk much about it. Train your eye more than your hand. Many people think they don't draw well because the hand doesn't obey. But in most cases, the hand is doing exactly what the eye tells it to do. The problem is that the eye doesn't yet know how to judge properly. It accepts errors as if they were correct. Drawing well is about making good visual decisions. That starts with perceiving tilt, distance, alignment, and proportion. For example, if two eyes aren't on the same level but you don't notice it, the hand has no way to fix it. That's why improving the eye accelerates learning more than any mechanical exercise. There are simple ways to trick the brain into seeing better. Mirroring the drawing makes asymmetries jump out. Zooming out or physically stepping back from the paper helps you see the whole, not just the detail you're obsessed with. Another powerful practice is constant comparison. Look at the reference, look at the drawing, go back to the reference. Not to copy, but to ask, is the angle the same? Does the relative size make sense? This internal dialogue sharpens the eye over time. It's also important to accept that the eye evolves in layers. At one stage, you only notice big errors. Then you start noticing medium errors. Only much later do subtle errors appear. That's a sign that your critical sense is becoming more refined. One important detail: critical sense without action turns into frustration. Whenever you notice an error, try to correct it, even if it's not perfect. That conscious attempt is what turns perception into skill. Draw every day, even if just a little. Many people associate improvement with long, exhausting sessions. The idea that to get better, you need to draw for hours on end. This can work, but only for those who already have very strong discipline. For most people, this mindset creates a cycle of excitement and abandonment. Drawing every day is not about quantity, it's about continuity. The brain learns better with frequent repetition than with sporadic effort. Even 15 or 20 minutes a day is enough for you to notice progress, even if very small. When you go many days without drawing, it's not just the hand that gets rusty. The eye also loses precision. There's also a psychological factor. When drawing becomes something rare, it gains weight. You feel like that moment needs to produce something good. This creates pressure, blocks you, and increases the chance of quitting. When drawing becomes routine, fear decreases. An important point is separating study drawing from portfolio drawing. Not every day you'll create something amazing. And you don't need to. Simple studies, scribbles, basic forms, quick observation count far more than they seem. In fact, many times I ended up having an idea from a random, unpretentious scribble. Creating a trigger helps a lot. Drawing at the same time every day, or always after a fixed activity, like having coffee or getting home. This removes the decision. You no longer ask, am I going to draw today? You just draw. It's also worth adjusting expectations. On bad days, reduce the scope. Instead of a full character, draw just the gesture. Instead of a scene, draw only boxes in perspective. The important thing is to try as much as possible not to break the frequency. Over time, you start feeling strange when you don't draw. And then discipline stops being effort and becomes identity. I am someone who draws. Study fundamentals, even when you feel lazy. Fundamentals have an unfair reputation. Many people imagine something boring, technical, and far from what they actually enjoy drawing. The problem isn't the fundamentals themselves, it's the way they're often presented. Studying fundamentals is the fastest way to improve your drawing. Perspective prevents you from breaking the physics of a scene. Light and shadow prevent you from scribbling without volume. Anatomy prevents you from inventing weird muscles. And so on. The most common mistake is trying to study everything at once. This creates overload and frustration. The ideal approach is to choose one focus at a time and apply it immediately to what you like to draw. If you like characters, study basic body volumes and apply them to simple poses. If you like environments, study one-point perspective and draw rooms, streets, corridors. Another mistake is studying only theory. Reading, watching, understanding, and not applying. Fundamentals only turn into skill when they go onto the paper. Even if you understand a concept perfectly, it won't show up in your drawing without practical repetition. It's also important to accept that studying fundamentals will make your drawings look worse for a while. You start noticing errors you used to ignore. This gives a feeling of regression, but it's progress. Your perception and level of demand have risen before your execution catches up. Don't confuse discipline with motivation. This is the topic almost no one wants to hear, but it's the one that delivers the most results. Motivation is unstable. It comes, goes away, disappears for weeks, and sometimes shows up out of nowhere. Discipline, on the other hand, is built in silence, without an audience, and often without any excitement at all. Many people quit drawing because they wait to feel motivated to continue. But motivation almost never comes before action. It comes after. You draw a little, see some progress, and that generates the desire to continue. When you wait for the desire to start, the pencil never leaves the table. It's also important to understand that bad days are part of the process. There are days when everything comes out crooked, days when you hate your own line. That's not a sign that you're getting worse. Creating a minimum commitment helps a lot. Something so small you can't refuse. 5 minutes. One scribble. One simple shape. Most of the time, you end up drawing more. But even when you don't, you kept the habit alive. If you made it this far, you already have something many people don't: awareness of the process. Now you have a choice. Continue or stop. It's up to you. If this video helped you in any way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next ones. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Don't forget to take a look at the description. There are several important links there that can help you even more. See you in the next video.